Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into the crypto market, really pulling signals and insights directly from the stack of recent articles you've shared with us.
Yeah.
Think of this as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding what these specific sources are highlighting about the market right now, cutting through some of the noise.
And it's really timely stuff, isn't it? Looking through this material you provided, they really seem to pinpoint some potentially critical moments happening right now.
Right.
Stuff like, a shift in the overall altcoin picture, Bitcoin's current technical dance, and even some specific like high volatility events in individual assets.
Exactly. We've got sources talking about an altcoin season warning, others drilling into Bitcoin's price action, some comparing this cycle to past ones, and even, like you said, presenting what seems like conflicting news around XRP.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
So our goal here is just to be your guides only through what this material is saying. We'll try to extract the key nuggets and help you see how these different pieces from the sources, well, how they sit together.
Okay.
So let's jump right into something that really grabbed my attention from the sources. This thing called an altcoin season warning. According to one source, a key indicator, the Altcoin Season Index, has just plunged.
It really has, yeah. The source is quite explicit that the index dropped significantly.
And they give the number. It dropped to 23. Now, the source is calling this specific reading a signal for a critical Bitcoin season.
Right. And what's notable here, based on that source, is how they framed this number 23 as the point that, well, triggers their definition of a Bitcoin season.
Okay.
Below this level, the article suggests market dynamics sort of fundamentally shift. Bitcoin might regain dominance, maybe lead the market's direction more forcefully than altcoins. It's presented, in the source as a critical pivot based purely on this index reading.
Okay, so that's a pretty strong signal from that source, pointing towards potential Bitcoin season. So if that's the case, what does that look like for Bitcoin itself, based on the price analysis and these other sources? Well, another source zooms right in on Bitcoin's chart, doesn't it? It points to a key price level Bitcoin is holding at, according to their analysis, 105K.
It does. And the article highlights a specific technical detail right at that price point. It notes the 50-day moving average support is under pressure.
Okay, the 50 MA.
Yeah, and it's right near what they describe as a triangle tip pattern on the chart. So, think of the 50-day moving average as that common line traders watch.
Right, for
to gauge the average price trend over the last 50 days, maybe acting as support. And the triangle pattern, well, that's a classic chart formation where price volatility is potentially, compressing before a larger move.
Okay, that makes sense. So the source is basically saying 105K is significant because it combines this trend line support with that tightening price pattern. What potential scenarios does this source lay out based on that setup?
Well, it presents two main possibilities. First, a confirmed breakout above the triangle pattern. If that happens, the source indicates it could lead Bitcoin towards a specific price target, $110.
$110, okay. And the flip side, what if that support gives way? What if it breaks down?
According to the same source, if there's a breakdown from this pattern, they state the targets stay low.
Stay low. They use that exact phrase.
That exact phrasing, yeah. It sort of implies significant potential downside below that 105K level and the triangle support, based purely on their technical read of the chart, of course.
Right. So pulling that picture together for you, based on this one analysis, Bitcoin seems to be at a really crucial point around 105K. This source is highlighting the specific technical pattern and support line as kind of the key determinant for the next big move, whether it's heading up towards $110K or seeing targets that, well, stay low.
Yeah, a real pivot point, according to them.
Okay, shifting gears a bit now. It's fascinating how multiple sources we looked at are, looking to the past for clues, comparing the current market cycle to historical ones.
They really are. And one comparison highlighted in the material draws a strong parallel between the current cycle, they call it #CryptoCycle2024,
right,
and the period between 2014 and 2017. And crucially, this source explicitly says the current cycle is not mirroring 2021.
Not 2021, okay. And this particular source, it comes with a pretty strong warning, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The exact warning from this source is, most won't see it coming. Brace for a rude awakening.
Wow, rude awakening.
Yeah, it suggests the source believes the market's following maybe a less obvious, older pattern that could catch a lot of people off guard, leading to unexpected outcomes.
That's powerful language from that source. Now, how does the other comparison source you provided frame things? It takes a slightly different tack, right?
It does. That source focuses more on the pattern of the 2017 bull cycle specifically. It describes 2017 as a, quote, textbook pattern.
Textbook pattern, meaning?
Meaning, according to them, it was characterized by relentless upward momentum peppered with short-lived falls. Kind of a steady climb with quick dips.
Okay, relentless but peppered. Got it. And what does the second source suggest about the current 2024-2025 cycle, comparing it to that 2017 pattern?
Well, this source points to signs of what it calls a delayed but explosive finale in the current cycle.
Delayed but explosive.
Yeah. So unlike the sort of continuous grind up they attribute to 2017, this article suggests the major parabolic peak, the finale, might still be coming, but has been pushed back compared to maybe previous timelines. Delayed.
Okay, right. This is where it gets really interesting when you look at your sources side by side, doesn't it? One source compares now to 2014-2017 and warns of a rude awakening, suggesting, I don't know, an unexpected downturn or shift. While another compares it to the pattern of 2017 and suggests a delayed explosive finale, hinting maybe a big move up is still to come. How do we make sense of these different perspectives from the same stack of sources you gave us?
Well, I think what these sources really reveal is that historical analysis isn't like a single crystal ball, right?
Yeah.
It's more like a set of different lenses you can look through.
Yeah.
Applying different historical patterns like the whole 2014-2017 period versus just focusing on the pattern of 2017's the exact same current market data can lead to completely different conclusions, from a rude awakening to an explosive finale. So the insight maybe drawn from these articles is the inherent uncertainty, maybe the subjective nature of historical comparison itself when you're trying to forecast markets.
Yeah.
It really underscores how different analysts using historical data from your sources can arrive at, well, pretty opposing outlooks.
That really does highlight the complexity. Okay, all right, let's transition now. We've talked broad market, Bitcoin, history. Let's get specific with an altcoin highlighted in the sources. XRP.
Yes, XRP.
What's fascinating here, again, is that the sources contain what seem like conflicting news points about XRP happening almost simultaneously.
Yes, let's look at what one source presented. First, some very positive news, actually. It states that XRP is primed to move higher.
Primed to move higher. Okay.
Right.
And what specific reason does that source give for this bullish outlook?
The source details that a Chinese company, Weebus International, they refer to it as WTO.
V2, okay.
Has plans for a $300 million XRP treasury plan, a big number. And the article also notes that this company submitted a Form 6K with the U.S. SEC regarding this intention.
Okay, hang on. SEC is the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and a Form 6K, that's for foreign companies disclosing info, right?
Exactly. It's a report foreign companies use to disclose material information to the SEC. So the source presents this as a pretty significant, positive, fundamental development, basically. A large planned institutional purchase being formally reported.
Wow, okay. A $300 million plan to buy and an SEC filing linked to it. That sounds like a really strong positive signal from that source, but then you have another source reporting something completely different.
That's right. A separate source, we looked at reports on massive liquidations on XRP. It describes an event where, quote, a small dip triggered chaos.
Triggered chaos. Okay. Help me understand what that source means by that in this context. What kind of chaos?
Well, according to that source, because of existing market volatility, a relatively minor downward price movement in XRP, the small dip, actually caused a brutal price drop.
Brutal, okay.
And this sharp fall then triggered a wave of long position liquidations. So the source implies this chaos happens because liquidations aren't just regular selling.
Right, it's forced selling.
Exactly. It's forced sell-offs by traders using borrowed money or leverage. When the price hits a certain point, boom, their positions are automatically closed, creating this cascade of selling that just amplifies the price drop much faster and harder than, say, typical trading might.
Okay, I see. So you have sources saying XRP is primed to move higher because of a major planned corporate buy, reported formally to the SEC, and other sources reporting that chaotic, massive liquidations just happened because a small dip triggered forced selling from leverage. What's really remarkable, based just on the sources you provided, is how these seemingly contradictory pieces of info about the same asset can coexist. How does this illustrate market dynamics, according to these articles?
Well, it really highlights this constant tension, doesn't it? As depicted in these sources, anyway. The tension between fundamental news on one side and market mechanics on the other.
Right.
A positive fundamental development, like a huge planned corporate investment filed with the SEC that can create optimism, suggests upward potential. But at the exact same time, the underlying market structure, things like how much leverage is built up, the general volatility that can mean a relatively small price move triggers mechanical selling, like these
Hmm.
liquidations, causing swift, sharp drops in the other direction. So these sources really show the market isn't just moved by one single factor. It's this complex interplay where good news can exist right alongside sudden, brutal volatility driven purely by trading dynamics.
Okay, let's quickly recap then. The key nuggets we've pulled only from the sources you provided for you. We looked at that altcoin season warning triggered by the index dropping to 23, signaling what one source is calling critical Bitcoin season.
Yep.
We analyzed Bitcoin's current technical position around 105K, with one source highlighting that triangle pattern as a potential pivot point for the next major move, up or down.
Right. And we explored that fascinating contrast in the historical analysis presented in the sources, one comparing now to 2014, 2017, and warning of a rude awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another focused just on the 2017 pattern and suggested a delayed explosive finale. It really shows how different historical lenses from your sources can lead to fundamentally different outlooks.
Absolutely. And finally, we highlighted that intriguing juxtaposition of information about XRP in the sources. The planned $300 million corporate treasury buy, linked to an SEC filing, contrasting so sharply with the report of recent massive liquidations and chaos triggered by volatility.
Yeah.
So hopefully this deep dive into your sources helps you feel a bit more informed about the distinct and, yeah, sometimes contradictory signals these particular articles are highlighting right now.
And just to reiterate, all of this information is derived directly from the material you provided. It
Mhm.
really illustrates the complexity, doesn't it? And those sometimes conflicting signals that are always present in market analysis. Understanding these different pieces and the perspectives they represent, that's where the true value of this kind of knowledge lies, I think.
So here's a final thought for you, building on that. Given those differing historical cycle comparisons we saw in the sources pointing to outcomes as wide-ranging as a rude awakening or an explosive finale, and considering the recent volatility shown in something like XRP, triggered by market mechanics despite positive news, how prepared do we feel for the scenarios these sources are outlining? What would you be watching next, based only on this information we've discussed?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.